Good evening. In the spirit of truth and reconciliation, we acknowledge the town of Edson is located on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral lands of the Niqawak, Soto, Siksika, Pakani, Kainai, Nakota Sioux, and the Dene and the Epitimisawak nations. We honor the knowledge of this land, the elders and youth which gather here, and our ancestors who have gathered here for centuries. Council, can I get a motion that the agenda for the April 23rd, 2024 budget meeting be adopted as presented? Go ahead, Councillor Chenard.
I'll make the adoption of the agenda.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? That motion is carried unanimously. Can I get a motion that the minutes of the March 21st, 2024 budget meeting be adopted as presented? And we will go to Councillor Moore.
I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? That motion is carried unanimously. Can I get a motion, please, that Council approve the 2024 operating budget as presented? Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. And we will welcome Michael Trebish, the Chief Financial Officer, and Dave McReynolds, Senior Municipal Finance and Management Consultant with TCI, who will be presenting on this evening. Take it away, Mr. Trebish.
Mr. Mayor, I'm actually going to just kick off first this evening, if that's all right with you.
Can we start from the beginning? Go ahead.
This evening, I'd really like to start off by highlighting the outstanding efforts with our CFO, our GMs, our managers, our admins, and our communications coordinator in bringing this budget for you today. In addition, this budget would not have been possible without Dave McReynolds from TSI. This has taken all efforts from many individuals to bring forward this budget for you today. The budget before you was based and prepared on the feedback and direction provided by Council in the March 21st meeting. And with that, I will hand things over to Dave McReynolds. He's going to kick off the start of our presentation.
Thank you, Christine. Is my presentation on the screen?
Yes, it is, Dave.
Oh, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's my pleasure to be here tonight to present the 2024 final budget. And I want to echo Christine's comments. Before I begin, I want to thank the town staff who contributed in the preparation of the operating budget. The CAO, Christine herself, the general managers, finance and support staff all contributed to this budget, and I'd like to thank them for their support. Tonight, we are seeking Council's approval of the operating and capital budgets. On the screen is our agenda for tonight. I will be speaking to the operating budget, and Michael Trebish will be speaking to the capital budget and the operating and capital reserves. In your budget package are 6 reports: the request for decision, the summary report, which is a 1-page budget report by summary account, the detail report, which provides greater detail by individual account, the capital budget, and the operating and capital reserves. A little budget background. On November 21 of last year, Council approved the 2024 interim operating budget with revenue and expenditures of $20,042,485. This amount was equal to 50% of the 2023 operating budget, plus some funding for some new initiatives. Since then, administration has completed an in-depth review of the 2024 budget by department and line by line. On March 21 of this year, Council participated in a budget workshop where administration presented a draft budget by department and by summary account. Administration also presented new additional budget requests for Council's consideration, including new staffing positions and new projects. After that meeting, administration took Council's direction and their requests and have included them all in the 2024 final budget document. The new budget requests that were added to the budget total $310,287. They are a new deputy fire chief position, an arena supervisor position, a communications support person position, upgraded HVAC filters for municipal buildings, life-saving materials for municipal buildings and vehicles, a housing strategy, additional funding for the RCMP contract, and a new grant for Rotary Club of Edson. The new positions in the budget are at 50% of their salary to account for their mid-year hiring. All of our requisitions have been received. The education requisition increased by $39,185, and the senior foundation requisitions have decreased. The operating portion reduced by $6,511, and the capital portion decreased by $24,648. Included in the budget are 8 projects that are funded either from reserve or by grant. All of the projects you see on the screen are funded from reserve, except for the final project, which is funded by grant. They are the information technology project migration to the cloud, the land use bylaw project, which is a carry forward project from 2023, the sidewalk program, the storm sewer assessment project, the construction specification and design guidelines project, the sponsorship project, which is another carry forward from 2023, the newly added housing strategy for $100,000, and a soundproofing project at Griffiths Park, which is funded by grant. The 2024 budget is balanced with revenue and expenditure budgets of $37,283,068. The summary categories of revenue are property taxes, sale of goods and services, revenue from our own sources, grants, and other revenues, which include our transfers from reserve. And I'd just like to say that the detail report that's in your budget package provides all the detailed backup, what's included in these categories. The expense categories are salaries and wages and benefits, contracted and general services, purchases from other governments, materials, goods, supplies, and utilities, transfer payments, financial service charges, and other transactions, which include our transfers to reserve. And again, the detail report provides all the detail of what's in each one of these categories and backs up these numbers. The budget includes transfers to reserve as per reserve policy FB3. Other transfers to reserve are budgeted to balance out funds such as this water and sewer accounts, the town budgets for lot sales in Hillendale 2, and any surplus in this cost center is transferred to reserve. The post-closure landfill liability is a transfer to reserve to build up funds for the closure and continuing costs of maintenance for landfill once it is closed. There's a general transfer reserve to balance the budget. In total, there is $725,000 transferred from reserve and $4,167,291 transferring to reserve. And Mr. Mayor and Council, that is my portion of the presentation, and I'll pass it over to Michael.
Thank you, Mr. McReynolds, and good evening, you Chair, and through you, the Chair, and all of Council. This definitely is a team effort tonight, and my job tonight will be to talk to you about the 2024 capital budget, the operating and capital reserves, and then a conclusion. November the 21st, 2023, Council approved a capital budget totaling $27.5 million. Tonight, the administration is bringing the capital budget forward for revisions to update the Yellowhead County Edson multiplex to $80.24 million. And Dave, can you put your slides back up for us, please?
What happened? Bear with me, Michael.
Go ahead, Mr. Bethgy.
Sorry, I turned that off on you. You just have to start sharing again.
Okay, bear with me 1 second. Is it back up, Michael?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I can turn click share on from my screen if that's easier.
So, Mr. Travish, are you focusing on the operating right now, or are you going into capital? Because capital's next on the agenda.
Capital budget, and then
Okay.
capital reserves, and then operating reserves.
Okay, I think we, CO beverage, I think we probably should stick to operating because that's what we're talking about on the floor.
Mr. Mayor, I think that this potential will give you the full picture, being able to talk about the reserves as well. The intention was to run through the entire presentation and then go back. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
Michael, I'm gonna let you share your screen.
Okay. Can I get the four-digit code?
We'll just get this technology figured out here. So council administration will run through both operating and capital, but any debate on the capital should be held when we actually put that motion on the floor. So if there's something you want to debate on operating, we can certainly do that during this motion that's on the floor, or any questions on capital, but any debate on capital should wait until the capital portion.
I'm able to share my presentation if you can't, Michael.
If you can,
Yeah,
that
go
would be
ahead if you
great,
can.
Mr. McReynolds.
There we go. We have it on the screen now.
Okay, let's take that slide from the top again. So tonight, my job is to present on the 2024 capital budget, the operating and capital reserves with a concluding slide. The reason the administration is bringing forward the capital budget one more time for council review is since November the 21st, we've increased the YCE multiplex project to $80.24 million. So that's the first change that the administration is bringing forward in the capital budget for council consideration. And we'd like to highlight some of the funding sources for the 2024 capital budget, namely the community facility enhancement program of $1 million is included as a funding source in this particular budget, also known as CFEB. We've also utilized $8.4 million of MSI funding in this year's capital budget. The Alberta Community Resilience Program is also funding this budget to the tune of $1.77 million. And the Canada Building Fund is also funding $579,000 of this particular budget. And Mr. McReynolds, if you could advance to the next slide for us. The next change that the administration is bringing forward is a reduction to one project right in the middle of your screen for a total of $1.5 million downward, leaving that project at $500,000, and the total amended capital budget that we're bringing forward for council consideration now totals $86.288 million. In the overall funding for this particular year's capital budget, I think it's imperative to comment on the fact that council and the administration have worked hard together to bring forward this budget with $23.8 million in municipal reserve funding for this year. So that's commendable. Mr. McReynolds, if you could advance the slides for us, thank you. So now moving on to the 2024 operating reserves. This year, the operating reserves are being topped up through annual contributions from the operating budget totaling $1.3 million. The administration is guided to make these contributions through policy number FB3. Transfers out of the reserves are approved by council in the budget process, which is what we're here to do tonight. And these transfers total $594,000. Mr. McReynolds, if you could just hold the slide there, don't advance. Oh, sorry, hold it there. I just wanted to highlight two of these transfers are actually reallocations from two of the reserves. One's the COVID reserve and one's the most grant reserve, and those are being transferred to the YCE reserve, which you'll see coming up in a future slide. Some of the reserves have a recommended optimum balance as guided in our policy. We've tabled these for you on the far right of the screen so that you can see where there is a optimal balance. We've also shown council the shortfall in funding that we need to catch up on in future years. And we are also going to recommend that the administration bring forward a review of these optimum balances, and also a possible consolidation of reserves where appropriate in the coming months. And Mr. McReynolds, you can advance. And here on this slide is the 2024 operating reserves continued, and you can see at the bottom row there are $593,000 in dollars being transferred out of the reserves, with 1.3 million coming back in to the reserves in the middle column, and the closing balance of these reserves at the end of the year is projected to be $5.5 million. Okay, Mr. McReynolds, if you want to advance. Thank you. And the slide represents the capital reserves for the budget for 2024. So similar to the operating reserves, the administration is guided by the same policy to replenish these capital reserves each year with a transfer in from the operating budget. Reserves that have an optimum balance similar to the previous slide are also listed in the second column from the right. And those balances are indicated to us by policy, and as listed, the shortfall is shown in the last column. Again, it is the recommendation of the administration that both the operating and capital reserves be examined and brought back to council later this year to review what optimum balances we as an organization should be working toward. Mr. McReynolds, if I could get you to advance the slide. And here are the totals of the transfers in and out of the capital reserves for 2024. So coming out of the reserves is $11.7 million. Coming back in is 4.3 for a closing balance of 20.8 million roughly. One comment on that column in the middle, top-up adjustments, we took some funds out of the RSA reserve to make sure that some of the reserves that ended in a negative balance weren't negative. So we transferred some dollars to bring those true back to zero. So in the case of for example, recreation and culture reserve in the middle of your screen, you can see that the optimum balance is recommended to be 300,000, so that one requires topping up in future years to get it back to 300,000. Okay, so Mr. McReynolds, one more click forward, please. Okay, so the next step, after all of the council and administrative budget changes are concluded, it's time to determine the revenue requirement for the municipality in the form of municipal property tax. So what we do next is Dave, can you just click your mouse one more time? So this red circle here shows that based on the Camelot system, which our assessor uses from Compass Assessment, they've provided this report to us, and the median assessment of a typical residential property in Edson is assessed at $336,400. This is an important number for council because in the next slide you will see, Dave, if you can advance it for me, you will see that at the end of the budget, the conclusion slide here is to show that when you take that median assessment of $336,400, the last year's tax compared to this year's tax with the recommended tax increase is a $65.50 tax increase, which equates to approximately, I believe it was 18 or 19 cents per day. We would like to thank the council, the administration, and Mr. McReynolds and all of the community partners that made this budget come together. This concludes our budget presentation, and the administration would be happy to address any questions that council may have. Thank you.
All right, so my quick math on that is about $5, just over $5 a month. I believe that's correct for the average property.
Yes, and it was 18 cents per day.
Okay. And we have no fee increases proposed in this budget either, which is really great news. Council, and I'll open the floor to questions on the presentation here today. Go ahead, Councillor Pasichny.
Yeah, through the mayor to administration, 2.89 is a lot easier to swallow than what Edmonton and Calgary are facing at 9% and 8%. So I think a good job on keeping it thin.
All right, thank you, Council. Councillor Moore.
Yes, through the chair to whoever. So does this include evergreens and school tax, or do we know what they're going to be? Yeah. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor, through to the councillor, sorry, Michael, would you like to answer the question?
Go ahead, Mr. McReynolds.
Mr. Mayor, through to the councillor. Yeah, my presentation did show the requisitions for Alberta schools and for the Evergreen Foundation. They're all included in the budget.
Okay, thank you. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Travish?
Through the chair to Councillor Moore, asked the question. The 2.89% represents only the municipal portion tax increase. The increase for the school requisition is a separate increase, just to clarify.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the mayor to administration and council and members of the public, I do want to thank our administration for the excellent work, the legwork that was done ahead of this budget. I echo Councillor Pasichny's words. This is an easier pill to swallow. 2.89, way easier than I guess Edmonton and Calgary are facing. I agree, and the legwork of going through each department and sort of auditing each department and looking at where we can find savings, where we're spending our money, and that work is paying off. And we're keeping that same level of service, which is what residents, according to the survey work that was done almost a year ago, is what people want. So I'm really supportive. And I also, in terms of the operating reserve, I'm happy to hear that we're reviewing the policies on that. I think our last budget meeting, Councillor Chachka brought up lots of questions with regards to the operating reserve policies and things like that, and perhaps we maybe noted some concerns and some questions along the way. But I'm confident when we review those policies, we'll get it right and make this process simpler and more efficient. So, very supportive of the motion on the floor, and thank you for your work.
Thank you, Councillor Chouinard.
Just a comment, I'm pleased with the 2.89, and most importantly, we did not decrease any services, so just my comment.
Councillor Chachka.
Thanks. Through the chair to administration. I also want to thank you guys for all your hard work, and I know I had a little bit of pressure there for you guys last time, and I want to thank you for your efforts, and also just trying to understand it. It's a completely different way the budget is done. I know it's still just another operating budget, but it is a completely different format. So I do have a question, though, on the reserve balances. And I realize that we're going to have maybe a more wholesome discussion about optimal balances at a later date, and I welcome that, of course. My question is more about the method that we're going to try to achieve the optimal balances, and I realize that they may change after we have our wholesome discussion about how they're going to change. So this year, we took 1/5 of that balance, of the optimal balance, and work towards that. So then in another year, like next year, then would we keep reducing that until we get to those? So next year we would do 1/4 of the optimal balance at that time, and keep working towards it so we eventually get up to the desired amount of those reserves? Or what would be a method to kind of achieve the target? And I realize these targets might change, but maybe some will stay the same. So I'm just wondering how that theory will work.
Go ahead, Mr. Travish, on your third week on the job?
Yeah, no pressure.
Fourth. Through the chair to Councillor Chachka. I'm probably not going to give you a great answer. I not even 100% sure that the 1/5 straight line topping up would work. It really depends on a number of factors in the actual results of the operation for the year to see if they'll even have enough to match that 1/5 or that 20% straight line contribution each year. Because something could go off the rails in the operating budget, not allowing that 1/5 transfer to be made in that particular year. So that has to be considered. The optimal balance has to be considered depending on what kind of assets we're trying to fund with those transfers. And I've only been here for 3 weeks and a little bit, and I don't have a great answer, but I think a lot needs to be looked at, and that would be my answer at this point.
Go ahead, Mr. McReynolds.
I would just add to Michael's comments, Mr. Mayor, through to the councillor, that the reserve policy does not provide direction on how to get to the optimal balance. So our strategy of doing 20% per year was what we thought was a reasonable amount that would go in each year and not hurt the budget and cause large tax increases. So the review of the policy would need to include how to get to optimal.
Do you have something else? Your mic's still key.
Yeah, a follow-up if you don't mind. Okay, through the chair to, I guess, council as well and administration for this question. So seeing that some of our balances in our reserves are not all at, well, I mean, I don't know if any of them are at the optimal balance. And I realize that we can't get there this year, right? Like that's not the objective, but I'm just wondering if some of them are needing a bit more of a top up than others, just based on what the reserves are, right? Like looking at the last fire season we had, does protective services need to be more, or things like that? Like, is this a balance that we're comfortable with going forward, knowing that we won't be able to adjust that until next year, which we have to have the wholesome discussion about our reserves, in the middle of that, right? But once we have that discussion, it doesn't mean that it will change right away, right? It will take until next tax season to do that. So I'm just wondering if the balances are desirable by what is there by council.
Well, if I can jump in, I think what was said earlier is we really have to have a deep dive into this and understand. I think we have way too many reserves. So until we actually flush out what we need for reserves, it's hard to be able to allocate monies appropriately. So I think there needs to be a more fuller discussion around that. I also know that as a municipality, our reserves are fully funded, unlike most municipalities out there that are not, and that we are actually have been historically in a very strong cash position for a municipality our size. I think the comparisons for towns in Alberta, I think we're in the top 5. Obviously, we're going to be drawing a lot of that down with all the projects that we have going on this year. But that's just my comment, Mr. Trabish. I don't know if you have anything to add, or Council, if you have anything you want to add.
Through the chair to Councillor Chapchka and all of council, any further transfers in the reserves, if council was to have that desire, would require a change to the 2.89%. So you'd have to keep that in mind.
Anybody else? Are you suggesting an increase from the 2.89, or kind of putting you on the spot, Councillor Chachka?
Through the chair to council, not particularly. I just want to hear what council's thoughts are. This is the opportunity to discuss that, and this, once that opportunity's gone, then we don't get to discuss that again till next season. So because this is, or I guess after we pass the budget, but this is the opportunity to talk about that if somebody has something they want to suggest. So
Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
Through the mayor to Councillor Chachka, I really just agree with what Mayor Zahara just said. Just, you hear my comments. Is that, we have too many reserves, and until we have a fulsome discussion and until perhaps our CFO has a little bit more time to sort of get to see things and gets a fuller picture of things. You know, I'm looking forward to having that discussion as to how we're going to arrive at those balances. But I think that's again, for a future discussion and following perhaps maybe best practices for municipalities. And I'm sure already Mr. Travish has a number of ideas rolling around that he certainly wants to flush out over the next few months that I'd love to hear in those ideas and direction that he may want to take there.
Councillor Chenard.
Through to council, as the mayor said, we've done a wonderful job of doing this, so I have to agree with the mayor. Yes, we need to flush this out, so I want to stay at 2.9, and we have time to replenish our reserves as we see fit.
Any other further comments, questions? Just to close the loop on that, I think too, we're gonna hopefully have this discussion later this year, so it's not like we're waiting until the next budget cycle. That will, you know, that'll set us up for the next budget cycle, so we can have a look at that. We also don't know what our year-end surplus is gonna be until our financials are completed. I have to say that it's been a breath of fresh air, Mr. Travish, having you here, and Mr. McReynolds, all your assistance, and people don't understand, I don't think, how much work has gone into this budget to really pull everything apart and get to where we are today. And we're actually kind of increasing levels of service in our community with this, particularly with the fire department and communications. You know, I think we've had a lot of discussion in our budget discussions here is, you know, looking at maintenance and doing a whole bunch of different things that I think are increases in the level of service. It may not be of significance on a piece by piece basis, but together I think taxpayers will be getting more for the dollars that are being spent. I do have some questions, but we'll go to Councillor Chachka first.
Thanks. Through the chair to administration. So I would like to have a discussion about the B1 project, but I don't know if you want that on operational or on the capital portion. Okay.
We'll save that for the capital portion.
Okay.
Okay. So just a question to Mr. Travis or Mr. McReynolds. And, you know, when I look at the reserve balances here, the energy reserve in particular, we have no transfers out. We have transfers in. However, in our capital budget, we do have energy projects that I thought were being funded from that. In particular, the power line burial on 46th Street, as well as council just approved additional amount of funds for the 18th Avenue for some energy projects. So is that an oversight, or is that someplace else, covered someplace else, not coming from reserve? Not sure if you can give any clarification on that.
Just bear with me for 1 minute, council, while I get with the correct spreadsheet.
And it's coming out of an operating reserve, but it funds capital.
Through the chair, what was the name of the project on the capital schedule?
So on the capital schedule, and sort of kind of skipping here, but they're kind of connected. The capital schedule will be the under utilities power line burial, 46th Street between 6th and 9th Avenue, as well as council passed a motion, I think it was last meeting or a couple meetings ago, for the 18th Avenue for underground burial as well. The amount of 50,000, which I understood was coming from that reserve, but I could be mistaken. Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the mayor. And again, I'm just looking at, maybe I'm just reading this wrong, the 18th Ave rehabilitation. It's currently at 2.6 million, and I thought that had increased. it was now 3. Mike, sorry if I'm. And it was just a few weeks ago, right? Last month?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Travish.
Yes, so through to the chair, the 2024 capital project that you just commented on, the power line burial for 300,000 is funded from a reserve. So if I go to the capital reserve schedule, there's 300,000 as a transfer out of the sewer reserve. I don't know what page number that is in your package, but if you go to the sewer, or sorry, if you go to the capital reserve schedule, there should be a $300,000 transfer out, and I would have to confirm with Mr. Fitzlitz if that is the project that he's funding from that particular reserve.
Go ahead, Mr. Kitlitz.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, I think maybe we've missed or had an oversight here, because I think you're correct. These are to be funded from the energy reserve. That's pretty intentional, right from day one. So I probably didn't help Mr. Travis in giving him the best advice when I reviewed this to catch that. So I think that's wrong. They should be energy reserve.
Okay.
Just further on that, Mr. Chair, the $300,000 coming out of the energy reserve would have absolutely no impact to the operating budget or the tax increase of 2.89%. It would simply be an update to the schedule and be a cosmetic adjustment, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I just wanted clarification on that because it just seemed odd that we weren't having anything coming in or out of that reserve, yet we have projects related to that. So, any other questions, comments? Anything on operating before we call the question on that? If not, I reiterate, thank the staff and Mr. McReynolds for their tremendous hard work on this. I think that what is being proposed here today is quite reasonable in comparison to what I thought we were going to be looking at this year, and with no fee increases, which I think is huge. If there's no other further questions or comments, I will call the question on the motion that's on the floor, that council approve the 2024 operating budget as presented. All those in favor? That motion is carried unanimously. And can I get a motion, please, that council approve the amended 2024 capital budget as presented? Go ahead, Councillor Pisichny.
I'll move the capital budget as presented.
All right, and I don't know if administration has anything more you need to add to that. All right, so I believe you had a question, Councillor Chachka.
Thanks. Through the chair to administration, we'll go back to the discussion about the B1 sewer project. So I do want to point out that it's not lost on me the previous discussion we had on this and what our current capital plan entails. It is very aggressive, so I absolutely realize that. And I also realize that if it were to get added to the budget, that it's unlikely that it will happen this year is what I'm guessing, just based on the aggressiveness of our capital budget and timelines. I just want to have a discussion though about it and how does administration see that project moving forward, and what I know you have been working with some of the residents and putting other plans in place to mitigate the risk on their end, and then some of the capital projects we have on the book that we're doing this summer may also help mitigate some of the risk with water infiltration and flooding within our sewer line during a water event.
Go ahead, Mr. Kitlitz.
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Chashka. So a number of questions. So in terms of the B1 project, so just for members of the public, just as a reference, this was a project identified in the sanitary sewer condition assessment that was presented to council last summer, I believe, or I can't even remember when it was now. The consultant that prepared the report prioritized the major capital projects that would provide the biggest improvement to our system and upgrades. And the B1 was listed as a medium priority project. Behind, I think there's I think five other projects. That's where the recommendations and obviously the capital plan and the work that's going to start actually very shortly here on the first two priorities that are on 10th Ave and further down on 54th Street to the highway to 2nd Ave. Now, so it's listed as a lower priority. We have, however, it's sort of listed on, well, it is listed on the 5-year capital plan to be determined for 24-25 pending sort of this discussion. What I can share that we did get a quote to do that design work, so we do have that. We've been quoted about $65,000 to do that design work. Certainly it couldn't be constructed this year. The other thing I don't have an answer for right now, but it's something we'd want to confirm with our consultants is ensuring that we're not doing, because this is at the top end of the system, and so we want to make sure that the upgrades at the bottom end are appropriate. Because if we fix something at the top end, it's not fixed at the bottom end, all we're doing is transferring the problem downstream. So I don't have that answer right now, but that's something we can confirm for sure. At any rate, it can't be constructed this year for sure. So either way, we'll have an answer for that in time for next year's capital budget. So, and I think the rest of the questions were in terms of what we've done operationally to do the best we can to mitigate. Manhole sensors have been installed in that area and are monitored constantly. All of last year, utility staff have went and flushed and cleared all the mains coming from that area all the way out. I guess it's east towards the trunk that runs south on the east side of town. So maintenance has been completed. Manhole sensors have been installed and are monitored. We've been trying to figure out a mechanism to send the alerts to some of the property owners as well as our staff when the manhole sensors get to a certain level. It's proven to be a bit trickier. We haven't figured out a foolproof way to do it yet, but we have a commitment from our staff to monitor and reach out to some of the residents that have expressed interest in knowing in advance. So certainly we'll endeavor to do that. And again, we have pumps, so we have pumps ready as we demonstrated last time during a pretty massive event. We were out as soon as we could to try to help mitigate as best we could. So we'll continue to do that, but until some of these infrastructure projects are done, that's the best we can do. Oh, I guess also, CEO Beveridge mentioned that the Wasp Creek project is still on the list, and we do have some positive news on it. It looks like the land dealings are working towards a positive end. So I can't share much details on that right now, but it's looking positive. So. And that project's still in the books, and if we get positives on the land dealings, we could probably start getting that project done this fall as well. Get it started this fall, not complete, but at least started. So hopefully that answered all your questions. I think I got them all.
Very complex problem. So just further to Councillor Chachka's inquiry, and I think you may have already spoke to this before, but the upgrades that we're doing on 10th and 54th, which that's going to be starting here soon, should that help mitigate some of the pressure on the upper end of town?
Mr. Mayor, absolutely. So again, according to our consultants in the report provided to council, that is the recommended best option to get the most amount of relief for that area right now. For as much as we can do, and at one time, this is the best bang for our buck. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, any further comments on the capital budget? Councillor Chachka.
Thanks, through the chair to administration. So just to follow up on that, thank you, Mr. Hitlitz, for that explanation. I know you have mentioned some of that before, but just having it all fresh is really helpful. So I know the residents probably want some peace of mind on that, right? Absolutely. And, toss around in my head, if we just add it to the capital budget this year, it'll just be like there and we'll get to do it. But I know the reality is that we don't do all of our projects every year. And I've been an advocate that we shouldn't have too many projects that we can't achieve either, right? So I'm torn a little bit with that. But I also don't want to put it on the capital budget and with complete knowledge that it will not get to that either, and send a false hope that it will be happening this year as well. So, Mr. Kudlitz, you said that it's already in our 5-year capital budget then for 2025 budget to come back for that design work to get scheduled. Is that just to get some clarity on that?
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Trashka. So the 5-year plan that was sort of endorsed, it's sort of a document's endorsed by council at the November 21st, 2023 budget meeting, includes that project. And what we had done based on the questions from council at that point in time about this project, the question was to bring back more information on it. We left it as to be determined for 2024 and 2025, but it is listed and we have that there. It's not forgotten, it's on the list. And yeah, as you mentioned, Councillor Chachka, if nothing's done today, if council isn't passing a motion today to proceed in any way, fashion, it'll be prioritized against all the other projects that council has to consider for 2025. So not an easy task for sure, but yeah, it's on the list.
CO Beveridge?
Mr. Mayor, through to the whole of council, I think it's also important to note that at that time, when that was brought forward, we didn't have the design price of how much that was going to cost. So we have more information as well. And so as we've tried to determine a path forward as designing projects one year and constructing the other, we're heading in a really good pattern. I would suggest that has been helpful to maintain that pattern. So now that we have that number, that's a lot easier also in advance to be able to incorporate that within the 2025 capital budget as well.
All right, council, any further questions? Comments? We're building the multiplex, so that's good. Lots of projects, and once again, thanks to our staff, Mr. Kitlitz and the entire team for their work on this. If council, you don't have any further questions or comments, I will call the question. All those in favor? That motion is carried unanimously. Motion for adjournment. Councillor Chouinard.
I'll make the motion for adjournment.
Thank you. All those in favor? That motion is carried unanimously. Thank you.